For the safety and protection of this courageous individual, we have chosen to keep certain identifying details and location information confidential. The threats against their well-being are real and serious. When someone makes the life-changing decision to surrender their life to Jesus Christ, they often face tremendous challenges and opposition. These brave souls who choose faith over comfort, truth over convenience, need our unwavering support now more than ever. Your role matters. Whether through heartfelt prayer, words of encouragement, or simply letting them know their sacrifice hasn't gone unnoticed, you can make a profound difference. React to the video, comment your thoughts, prayers, and location. Every person who takes a stand for their faith deserves to know they're not walking this difficult path alone. Their courage inspires others, their testimony changes lives, and their willingness to endure hardship for their beliefs deserves our deepest respect and appreciation. I grew up like any other boy, full of questions about the world. In school, I often heard people say, "Islam is a religion of peace." I wanted to believe that because it sounded comforting, but inside me I kept wondering, if it is really peace, why do we always hear about wars, suicide bombings, and people dying in the name of Allah? When I was about 12, I started reading books and listening to people talk about history. One of the first names I came across was Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam. I discovered that from the very beginning, Muhammad had told his followers to use fear and war to spread Islam. It was strange to me because I always thought a holy man would talk about kindness, forgiveness, and mercy. Instead, I kept reading stories of battles, invasions, and people being forced to follow a religion they did not want. The more I searched, the more I found that this war, called Jihad, was not something that began recently with ISIS or Al-Qaeda. It was something that stretched across 1,400 years. From Arabia to Africa, from India to Europe, the pattern was always the same. People were given three choices: become Muslim, live as second-class people without rights, or be killed. I remember sitting in my room one night, staring at the small lamp on my desk, and thinking, how can something that claims peace be built on so much blood? That was the first time my heart began to feel uneasy, like I was being pulled to search for the real truth. I didn't know then that this was the beginning of a long journey that would one day lead me to Jesus. As I grew older, I began to study more carefully the history of jihad. I read stories that shocked me. For example, in India, when Muslim armies invaded, they destroyed temples, killed multitudes, and forced Hindus to bow down or live as slaves under heavy taxes. I could almost imagine the cries of mothers and children as their homes were set on fire. It was not just once or twice, it happened for centuries. Then I turned to the history of Spain. People used to say that Muslims and Christians lived peacefully together in what they called Muslim Spain. But when I dug deeper, I realized the truth was different. Christians and Jews were only safe when they accepted humiliation and lived like servants under Muslim rulers. One story stayed with me. In Granada, a Jewish man was given a high position by a Muslim leader. The people were so angry because their law said a non-Muslim could not rule over them. In that rage, they killed him and 4,000 other Jews. Reading these stories, I felt like I was walking through rivers of blood in history. I saw that jihad was not a short war or a local conflict. It was a steady, unbroken chain of violence, moving from one nation to another. It was in Spain for 700 years, then across France, almost taking over Europe. If not for men like Charles Martel who fought at the Battle of Tours in the year 732, maybe even Europe today would have been completely Islamic. At night, I would lay on my bed thinking about these things. My mind asked questions I could not silence. Why do we ignore this history? Why do we keep saying peace when everywhere jihad brought war? And where is God in all of this? Does he just watch quietly? If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love to have you join us. We're always excited to welcome thoughtful people like you into this growing community. The more I learned, the more I realized that jihad was not just an old story locked in dusty books. It was alive, moving, and pressing closer even to the West. I remember watching the news about 9/11. 2 tall towers in New York City fell, thousands of people died, and the world shook. People said, "This is the beginning of a new threat." But from all I had read, I knew it was not new. It was the same old jihad, wearing a new mask. Yet, what troubled me most was not only the attacks, but how leaders in America and Europe responded. George Bush stood on television and said, "Islam is a religion of peace." Deep inside, something twisted in me. How can this be peace, when the very book of Islam commands war against non-believers? I realized that even the strongest nations were closing their eyes, pretending that if they used the right words, the problem would disappear. In time, I also discovered how leaders like President Obama removed every mention of Islamic jihad from the training materials of the FBI and the Army. They refused to call the problem by its name. I thought of soldiers being sent to fight without being allowed to know the real reason for the battle. It felt like sending a blind man into the middle of a storm. I walked through the streets of my city, watching people go about their daily lives, shopping, laughing, hurrying to work. They had no idea of the fire that was quietly burning beneath their feet. And when I read about how in England, Sharia courts were already operating in some areas, I felt like I was watching a slow flood that no one wanted to admit was rising. Those were heavy days for me. I felt like a boy carrying a secret weight that others refused to see. But in my heart, a quiet whisper began. If nations close their eyes, does God also close his? Or does he have another plan? As I searched more deeply, I decided to look at the root, Muhammad himself. What did he really teach? What did he command his followers to do? I discovered that he gave them a 3-step instruction. First, invite people to accept Islam. If they refused, make them live as second-class people with no rights. And if they refused that too, then fight them until they were destroyed. This knowledge troubled me. I sat with my notebook one evening, writing down the differences I was beginning to see. On one page, I wrote Muhammad. On the other page, I wrote Jesus. The more I compared, the heavier my heart grew. Muhammad told his people to bring others under submission, even by terror. Jesus told his followers to love their enemies and pray for those who hated them. Muhammad gave people no choice but Islam, slavery, or death. Jesus gave people freedom to believe or to walk away, never forcing anyone. Muhammad said the world outside Islam was the house of war. Jesus said his kingdom was not of this world. I sat there for a long time, staring at the 2 pages. It was as if a veil was being lifted from my eyes. I realized that one path was built on fear and blood, the other on love and sacrifice. My chest felt heavy as though a voice was pressing into my spirit, letting me know, now you see the difference. You must choose which voice to follow. That night, I could not sleep easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined the countless lives that had been crushed under jihad, and then I imagined the quiet figure of Jesus walking among the broken, offering peace without a sword. Something in me longed for his voice, but I was still afraid to step out of the shadows I had lived in for so long. The weight of truth pressed harder on me as days passed. I could no longer ignore what I had learned about Muhammad and jihad, but at the same time, I was afraid. Afraid of being called a traitor. Afraid of losing friends. Afraid of walking into a world that seemed uncertain. One evening, I remember sitting alone in the park. The trees stood tall around me, and the city lights flickered in the distance. My mind was loud with questions. If I walk away from Islam, what will happen to me? If I follow Jesus, will I be rejected? What if I am wrong? In that moment of confusion, something happened. It was not a dream, and it was not a voice in my ears. It was a stirring inside me. I felt a presence that was gentle but strong, like sunlight breaking through dark clouds. He revealed to me that I did not need to be afraid of man. He let me know that truth was not found in violence but in him. As you follow along with this powerful testimony of transformation, we invite you to engage with the community. Let us know where you're watching from and share your thoughts on how his journey resonates with you. Your reactions and comments help create a meaningful dialogue around life-changing experiences like these. Tears filled my eyes, though I tried to hold them back. For the first time, I felt that God was not far away, silent and cold. He was close. He was personal. He cared about the struggles of my heart. That night, I whispered a prayer I had never prayed before. God, if you are real, if you are truly love, then show me the way. I went home, but I was not the same. My bed felt different. My heart felt different. It was as if a seed had been planted inside me. I didn't know it then, but that seed would grow into faith. After that night in the park, I could not resist the pull toward learning more about Jesus. I went to a small Christian bookshop not far from my neighborhood. At first, I was nervous, looking around to make sure nobody I knew was watching. My hands trembled as I picked up a Bible for the first time. When I opened its pages, the words seemed alive. I read about Jesus healing the sick, forgiving sinners, and calming storms. I read about him saying that whoever followed him would have life, not death. Each line felt like fresh water pouring into a dry land inside me. I compared it to the stories of Muhammad, and the difference was like night and day. I also began to listen to testimonies of believers. I heard of Muslims who left everything behind because they met Jesus in dreams or visions. Some of them lost their families, some faced persecution, but their voices carried a joy that was unshaken. I could not understand it at first. How could people be joyful when they lost everything? But deep in my heart, I knew it was because they had found someone worth more than life itself. Slowly, I began to pray more often. Not in Arabic phrases I did not understand, but with my own simple words. I would whisper, Jesus, if you are real, make yourself known to me. And each time, I felt peace settle in my heart, the kind of peace I had never found in Islam. It was like walking into a lighted room after being in the dark for years. My fears did not vanish at once, but a new strength began to grow inside me. The pull toward Jesus became stronger each day, until I could no longer resist it. One night I closed the door to my room, turned off the light, and knelt beside my bed. My heart was pounding, as though it knew that what I was about to do would change everything. I remembered all that I had read, the violence of Jihad, the brokenness it caused, and the love of Jesus that stood in complete contrast. In that moment, I realized I had to make a choice. It was not about pleasing people or avoiding fear. It was about life and death, truth and lies, heaven and hell. I whispered with trembling lips, Jesus, I don't know everything about you, but I know you are real. I know you are love. I give you my life. As soon as I prayed, something happened deep inside me. It felt as though a heavy chain had fallen from my heart. A warmth filled me, not like fire that burns but like light that comforts. He let me know I was no longer bound by fear or by the darkness of falsehood. He revealed to me that he had chosen me, not because I was strong, but because he loved me. I wept quietly in the darkness of my room. Those were not tears of sadness, but tears of release. I knew that I was no longer alone. I belonged to Jesus. The next morning, the world outside was the same. Cars honked, people hurried, life continued, but inside me, everything was new. It was as if I was seeing through fresh eyes. For the first time in my life, I had peace that no war, no jihad, no threat could take away. Not long after I gave my life to Jesus, the battle around me began. It was not a battle with swords or guns, but a battle of rejection, suspicion, and fear. Some friends noticed I no longer joined them in the mosque. They asked questions, but I avoided giving answers at first. My family grew worried about me because I was spending more time reading the Bible and less time with the Quran. I could feel their eyes watching me, searching for what had changed. The hardest moment came when one relative confronted me directly. He asked if I had turned away from Islam. My mouth went dry, my hands shook, but I could not lie. I told him I had found peace in Jesus. His face tightened with anger, and from that day, the distance between us grew like a wall I could not climb. At times, loneliness pressed hard on me. I would walk through the streets and feel like a stranger in my own community. Fear whispered in my ear, reminding me of the dangers that many converts faced. But in those moments, I would pray. I would feel God's presence reassuring me that He had not left me. He revealed to me that He was my Father, my protector, and my friend. Even though people turned away, I found strength in Christ. I joined a small group of believers who understood what it meant to pay a price for faith. Their love encouraged me, their prayers lifted me, and their testimonies reminded me that I was not walking this road alone. It was not an easy path, but I discovered that every struggle only made my faith stronger. The same Jesus who had saved me was now carrying me through rejection and fear. As I walked further in my new faith, I began to see that my story was only a small part of something much greater. God was not only saving me, He was working across nations, across history, across time itself. When I read the Bible, I saw how God's plan had always been to bring people from every tribe, language, and nation into His family. I realized that while Jihad was about forcing people into submission, Jesus was about inviting people into love. The difference was as wide as the sky. Whether this testimony speaks to your own struggles, offers hope for someone you know, or simply moves you in some way, your voice matters. Join the conversation and be part of a community where real stories of change inspire and encourage others. Your reactions and comments help create a meaningful dialogue around life-changing experiences like these. One night during prayer, He let me know that my life was not an accident. He revealed to me that the things I had learned about jihad and violence were not just for knowledge but for testimony. He showed me that He wanted me to tell others the truth, that the world may offer lies and fear, but His word brings freedom and peace. I began to look at nations differently. When I heard of England allowing Sharia courts, I no longer felt only fear, but also a burden to pray. When I saw America struggling to even name the threat of jihad, I no longer felt only frustration, but also the call to speak truth with courage. God gave me hope that even in the darkest places, light can shine. I remembered stories of believers in Egypt, Iran, and Pakistan who chose Jesus though it cost them everything. Their faith was a sign to me that God's kingdom is unshakable. For the first time in my life, I understood that history is not ruled by jihad, but by Jesus, the King who laid down His life and rose again. Looking back on my journey, I see how God's hand carried me from confusion into truth, from fear into peace, from death into life. I was once blinded by stories of jihad, history filled with violence, and leaders who called darkness light. But Jesus found me. He revealed to me that His way is not terror but love, not destruction but salvation, not submission by force but surrender by grace. Now, I want to speak to every believer who hears my story. Do not take your faith lightly. What we have in Christ is a treasure greater than gold. There are people around the world paying the highest price just to hold on to this faith. Some lose family, some lose friends, some even lose their lives, but they know Jesus is worth it all. Love one another. The world is divided by hatred, but we must be united by love. Pray for each other. When one suffers, let all feel the pain and lift it before God. Stand firm in the Word. Do not let the noise of the world drown out the voice of God. Read your Bible daily, let His words shape your heart, and let His Spirit guide your steps. Also, pray for the nations. Pray for those still trapped in the chains of jihad and falsehood. Pray for Muslims, that they may meet Jesus the way I did. Pray for leaders, that they may no longer close their eyes to truth. Pray for courage, because the days ahead may not be easy. He let me know that His church will not be destroyed, no matter how fierce the battle becomes. He revealed to me that even when the world loses hope, His kingdom is advancing. And He assures me that if we hold on to Him, we will see His victory. So I encourage you today, hold tightly to Jesus. Walk closely with Him. Love one another deeply. Pray without ceasing. And never forget, our King has already won the greatest battle.